It's probably a very bad idea. Okay, it's fine. You got this.
You got it.
Okay. So, I was going to try to get the second part of the Cyborg Tinkerer out this week because I'm tired. I want it to be done and over with at this point, but I ran out of time. I had tried preparing another video, and then I was just filming it, and I realized that my brain was working a little too fast when I was writing the script for it. I'm either going to have to make it a two-parter or an essay because there's just too much to cover. That failed. So, you know, last minute, I tried filming another video that I was like, okay, this would be a good opening discussion for this topic because I've been wanting to get to it too for a while. I didn't like how it turned out. This is the fourth time I'm filming a backup video, and I could have just spent the time trying to crank out the Cyborg Tinkerer. Realistically, it's the research for me that's kind of hindering my progress. So this is kind of a spur of the moment. It's another discussion. It's kind of tying into more AuthorTube stuff. I apologize to my BookTube viewers. I am trying to keep my content for like both readers and writers within both communities, but AuthorTube is going to take a lot of my focus for the next couple of years. I think I need to kind of crank in the overtime, and I think I need to kind of kick out some more books at a faster pace within the next 2 years. Not so much so that like I feel like people would be bored by year 2, which usually they are, but also because I think I'm going to be bored. I think after 2 years of reading AuthorTube books and reviewing them, I'm going to be like, okay, can we move on now, please? So I would like to get as many out as possible. I had debated on pulling from AuthorTubers books that are no longer on here, that no longer have channels, but honestly, a lot of their advice had affected a lot of people. A lot of them were still giving advice even before they were publishing their debut novel and they were just working on it. So I do think it counts, but also kind of like I kind of want to do a deep dive in like what happened to some of these writers that kind of disappeared. I've been wondering, so I would like to research and see if I could come up with some answers for other people that are wondering, like where are they now type scenarios. And yes, these are going to be mostly essay videos. They're not going to have that essay format, but they are going to be more relative to, I don't know, the format that I've been going with these in-person videos. They're just going to be better scripted and edited, and they're going to be more researched. I'm not going to forget about my booktubers. I'm not going to forget about the people that came from booktube and that I know are more so into the bookish content. So aside from doing the book reviews for AuthorTube, similar to how my Cyborg Tinkerer video just released, along with releasing some interesting topics that I feel like aren't really talked about, they aren't really discussed, they aren't really addressed. While I would like to say today's video was researched, I did not have the time to research, so this is going to be another rant. I feel like I'm getting good at these, but at the same time, they're starting to feel monotonous when I see certain writers receiving criticism for their books not being within the confined lines of traditional publishing, or what agents might be looking for, or what might not be selling. The term rebel writers in the terms of like rule breakers, it's just, I feel like it's really taken out of context. I feel like it's something that people don't really have a grasp of what it actually means. But sometimes it feels like it's kind of an excuse to just say, well, my book's not like your book, so deal with it. I kind of want to talk a little bit about what I feel like rebel writers really are and the rule breakers really are, and whether or not I think some of these AuthorTubers that like to use those terms, if their books really qualify as that. The answer to that, I guess, would be yeah, they're definitely breaking the rules. They're definitely rebels. But at the same time, it's kind of ironic because a lot of their videos are all about coloring within the lines, so to speak. Follow these rules if you want to see success, all the while not admitting that their progression to success and their plans and the things that they did to find that success cannot be universal. Because if we all got on here and we all did quality videos and we all made professional videos about making advice, so many other writers are doing, it tends to saturate and it tends to flood the market and you tend to get lost in it. And then it just becomes harder to stand out again. From the few books that I have read, I wouldn't really say that their books are basically paving the way to new things and new experiences and new paths to come. I don't see a lot of AuthorTube books as that, but that seems to be what's associated with rebel writing, and it's associated with rule breaking, and it's associated because you do kind of need a little bit of rebellion to push through the gatekeeping, to push through the societal standard, the expectations of what is seen as professional writing. Self-publishing has already done that. Like the writers in self-publishing, even the smut writers have kind of really like just charged the way to breaking through all of those barriers and proving you don't need an editor to find success. You don't have to have an agent to find success. All you literally have to do is write something that people want to read. And it could be a shitty format, it could have misspellings, it could have mispunctuations, shitty cover, the works. It could be based off of a fan fiction of a celebrity. Like, as long as people want to read it, that's where your success is. And that reality that we've all kind of accepted and that we've all kind of been exposed to over the last few years, I feel like is really swept under the rug. Like, they don't really want to acknowledge it. They don't really want to acknowledge that it's not as complicated as it's made out to be. And in trying to be rule breakers and in trying to be rebel writers, they end up becoming gatekeepers. Because they're not really breaking the rules so much as just making their own. You will also get those writers that are like, well, they did it, so can I, without actually accepting the full picture. So the writers that tend to talk about being rebels, or I have a theory that their writing wasn't seen as acceptable. I have a theory that there's a lot of writers on here that weren't accepted by agents, even though they have videos showing that they went to actual conventions to talk to agents and to pitch their idea and to pitch the plot of their novel. And then we find out a few videos down that they've decided to self-publish. My theory is that a lot of these rule breakers and rebels, they tend to get their ego hurt when they realize that it's going to be more work than they were willing to put in originally. And then I think there's a lot of self-doubt. I think there's also a lot of self-loathing. But then that's usually followed up by this Dunning-Kruger effect, like this impulse of, no, I can. All I really need is to build a really big YouTube audience that believes in me like I believe in me, and they will buy my book, and that's where I will find success. The rules within the AuthorTube community are create a platform, build an audience, sell your books to that audience via self-publishing or traditional publishing, whatever that may be. Traditional publishing kind of cracks me up because when I was querying and I was considering it, a lot of agents and a lot of publishing companies will ask for your social media links, and they will ask for that because they're looking for how much exposure you actually have. But it's not every single one, but it's also kind of like, yeah, that's kind of what they've made it about. And in pulling away from that, just to have more control, have more royalties, have more say, even though it's going to be more work. Again, I think that we've kind of created different rules within the self-publishing realm that is not so much rebellious as it is very capitalistic, very consumerist based. It's more about the image that we project, and it's more about like the reputation that we kind of build and the reputation that we kind of have. The whole idea of like rebelling against the system, I think isn't necessarily a bad thing all the time. I think sometimes it can also be taken out of context. I think sometimes it could be something that can be harmful, especially when you have such high stakes emotions involved and when you have this kind of influence on a lot of people. It could be a positive influence or it could be a negative influence. The thing about rebellion is that it does have its place. If we didn't have that rebellion, we wouldn't have moved past those barriers. And that's kind of the whole point of being an artist, is to see what's beyond, to go beyond what we know and what we understand, to tackle what's scary, what's unfamiliar, something that's outside of our comfort zone. You have writers that are fine with just being writers, and then you have writers that see themselves more as artists and see themselves more on the artistic side, because to them it's not about really that paycheck. It's not really about how much of a following you have. It's not about how many books that you sell, and it's not about your ego. It really is about exploring those deeper parts that are kind of often brushed off because they're uncomfortable to deal with, because they're unfamiliar for people to deal with. And that is kind of where that rebellion comes in, is because taking the more artistic approach is a very risky one. It's one that not a lot of people are going to agree with. It's one that not a lot of people are going to understand, and not a lot of people, most people in fact, are not going to support because it's not logical. And if you're not on that side of the spectrum, that's fine. I think you can kind of be on the business side and be a little bit rebellious, but it comes off as more pretentious because it doesn't really feel like going beyond those boundaries because they're trying to explore what's more. It sounds more like they got their feelings hurt and they just want to do what they want to do. But then when you have readers who are kind of criticizing and coming off and realizing that your stories are kind of lacking in something, and they either say something or they don't, but they also tend to get a following. They also tend to get that. And then you claim that it's just the haters. A lot of those videos that follow kind of confirm my suspicions of that egotistical impulse to just want to pull back for that vanity writing, just to publish the book to a large number of people because that's all you really care about. It's not about retaining that audience. It's not about speaking to a certain type of people that you are trying to reach. It's about the money. You have the ones that claim that that's why they're doing it the way that they're doing it, but it's almost like they're abusing the self-publishing industry for their own vanity, for their own financial gain, to support that vanity. And it's backwards to me. I don't see it as being a rule breaker so much as just being a pretentious jackass that's kind of eventually going to ruin it for everyone else. I could be completely wrong, and I know that there's a lot of people on here that can be kind of touchy about those topics. A lot of people on here just want to pursue what they want to pursue, and that's fine. And I think it's fine to come from a business standpoint of, well, I want to write, but I also want to make money. I would be a liar if I came on here telling you that an artist is just someone who just wants to write and doesn't want to eat or breathe or buy a nice home someday. Still want to live a good life. Like, it doesn't all have to be work, but it's all in that main goal, and it's all in that intention. I feel like we're not really giving writers on here enough room to grow either, and I think that's kind of another problem. I think another reason that they want to be rebels and they want to be rule breakers is not just to do what they want to do, but a lot of it is fear of like moving forward, a fear of having created a certain reputation to be something that people expect. So I do think setting the right expectations are important, but I also think that the reputation that we tend to create on here should not be like an end-all be-all. I think that a lot of writers tend to come on here and the only thing that really changes is the background. The only thing that really changes is the lighting, the setup, or the book that we're releasing. And I don't think we're really setting that right expectation to allow writers on here to change and to grow, because we've built a fan base, we've built a certain image, and we've promoted this thing that kind of keeps us within this bubble. And while that bubble keeps us safe as far as, well, we're rule breakers and we're rebel writers, so we can do what we want and screw anybody who says otherwise, but it is kind of hindering our ability to be able to change and to be able to be different, and that is what's going to hinder our ability to move past those barriers, to move past what's comfortable. We are kind of screwing ourselves over by setting this expectation for our viewers as well as our readers that things are always going to stay the same. That safety is what we need to break if we actually want to be rebel writers. If we actually want to be rule breakers, we need to learn to expand. We need to learn to break outside of that comfort zone. We need to learn to challenge other ideas. Like, sometimes the enemy is just kind of like just keeping ourselves within because we're too scared to do anything different. We're too scared to break past those barriers. We're too scared to set up something different because we might lose our audience. We might lose our viewers. We might lose our readers. And I understand that fear. But if we don't start changing those expectations to allow people to realize that there is growth, there is something beyond that hardship, there is something more beyond that discomfort, if you can just push through it, there's something that's greater on the other side. And I think that's kind of the expectation that one with a rebel heart really wants to have if you want to make that difference. Being a rebel writer isn't about just doing what you want to do because somebody told you that your writing sucks, or somebody told you that's not going to sell, or somebody told you, well, that's not how the traditional way works. That's not how convention works. That's not what the market's expecting. It's about wanting to challenge. It's about wanting to do the difficult things that other people don't want to face, that other people don't want to accept. Are you writing to be a writer, or are you writing because you want to write? Because it's something that's a part of you? Are you still coloring inside those lines? You tell yourself you're coloring outside the lines, but you're really only coloring inside the lines that you've created for yourself. I don't think that the conventional way of doing things, and I don't think one who follows the rules, one who follows the guidelines, I don't think you're in the wrong. There are plenty of readers who want to stick with what's comfortable, who want to stick with what's predictable, because we have so much unpredictable shit going on in the world. It makes us feel safe. It makes us feel good. And sometimes it is nice to just read a book, to just pretend like everything else doesn't exist. I also just don't think that it's right for writers to make it sound like if you're not a rebel writer, then you're not edgy enough. Because at that point, it doesn't really become about being a rule breaker and paving new ways. It becomes about you. It becomes personal, and it becomes more self-centered. It's been something that's kind of been on my mind though, because like I said, while I'm delving into a lot of these AuthorTube books, I'm also kind of watching more AuthorTube videos. And even though some of them are old, I do think that there are a lot of points that I would like to make and I would like to bring up. You kind of pick up on it. There's more to it than just that. This community has been kind of festering in its own juices for so long, staying the same, and the only thing that I'm really seeing more of is I'm seeing more arrogance, more consumerism, more brands. I remember when I first started my channel, and I remember like I was picking on BookTube, and I remember I pissed off a lot of booktubers in the process, and one of the comments that kind of stuck with me was how jacked my channel looked at the time, because I was trying different methods and trying different formats, and how they said that my branding was so all over the place. And I remember thinking, like, I'm not a candy bar. I'm not trying to make myself a product to sell. I don't know. I feel like we've kind of set up these other expectations where we also see people online as objects. I think that kind of does tie into the whole rebel and taking these terms out of context to make them into a product. Like, I think that's why that pick-me-girl mentality and personality also kind of exists. It's turning everything into like a stereotype or an archetype, and then just slapping a label on anything that we see online and any person that we see online. I think that's something that we could change. I think that the constant advertisement and the constant perfectionism and the constant marketing is only aiding in that fact, and it's really kind of stripping the meaning to what these words we used to use all the time really stand for. That's my video. That's my rant. I will really try to get the Cyborg Tinkerer, the part 2 up by the time of the next upload. Stay tuned, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you're willing to wait for more, and I hope to see you guys in my next video.
The demons you forgot about, in the blind spot sitting in the bed. Now I'm making up beep, invisible to me, yeah. Corrupt your souls, don't know. Got black moon behind the drywall. Couldn't even see, even when you bleed. So now you can feel